So this is what I had envisaged and planned to do with the Buck team, and to be honest, it's up to you guys what you want to work with them on training and in game days. But this is just hopefully just an idea of the way I had going forward with them. So you can take bits of this if you want. You can copy and paste it if you want. It's up to you. Hopefully, either way, it's going to help. So as I already mentioned before, looking at the notion of receiving lines, imaginary lines that go across the pitch is to help the players spread up and down the pitch, forward and back, with the idea being then that it makes it easier to spread out, and it then means that it doesn't matter what formation you're playing. If players are on different receiving lines, when you're in possession of the ball, you're spread out and it's easier to play, because if you focus on a certain formation or a certain strategy, then when you change the formation, you're then having to adapt. Whereas if you focus on receiving lines first, the formation in essence doesn't matter as much, and it'll be easier then to transfer the way you want to play across different formations if you focus on receiving line first. So, idea of receiving line: start from a goal kick. If the keeper has the ball on the edge of the 6 yard box or the edge of the mini box here, do not want all the players on the same line here, because as you saw on Sunday, all the opposition do is get really close, and that makes it a lot harder for us to play forwards, because then we try and play and it's really crowded. If you take your time and go on a different receiving line, the idea of a receiving line is a teammate next to you. So the formation I've put up here is a 1, always include the keeper, 2, 2, 2, 2. So 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. The idea is if you start on different receiving lines, no more than 2 players on the same receiving line, let's say, if you're on different receiving lines, it then automatically, as you see there, it spreads the formation a little bit. It staggers it. So there's 1 there, 2 there, whatever. It spreads it out, it staggers it. So therefore, it creates more layers, and that'll make it easier for us to play football. Because then if they do get really close, and we're on different receiving lines, because we're staggered, we can then, we've got more options to bypass that line. If they decide to mark us and then they inevitably have to spread out a little bit, because if they want to mark it, they have to spread out a little bit. It creates a bit more room for us then to play football. Okay, to receive it and go forwards there. So the idea of receiving lines, it will organically create space for us to play. When we did do that on Sunday, you could see it happen. It then played into our favour because we focused a lot on small-sided games, a lot of looking after the ball, protecting the ball, and then dribbling, taking players on. If you focus and play and on starting positions being on different receiving lines, it creates more space. Again, it doesn't take the formation into account, so therefore it can be easier to change the formation as long as in different receiving lines. So I always say the first receiving lines are the ones nearer the goal. The last receiving lines are nearer the opposition. Depending where you are on the pitch. Again, these are not fixed lines. It's just a rough guide. Any player asks, you say just look to the person next to you. If you're in line with them across the pitch, you're on the same receiving line. Can you find a different receiving line? It makes it more staggered, makes it easier then to play. This will not happen overnight. Guarantee you will not learn, the players will not learn this overnight. It will take time. It will take weeks. It will take months to then naturally go, right, we get the ball here, we then naturally find a different receiving line. This also counts if it's a throw-in, okay? You want players behind the ball and you want players in front of the ball. You do not want them all on the same line, because then again, it'll make it a lot easier for them to mark us and defend against us, but it'll make it also harder for us then to play football, because we're all bunched up. Get a player back here, get a player on here, get a player in there, player out wide, player over there. It will organically create space and make it easier for us to play football. Again, this will take time. I guarantee you it will take time. It will take months. It will take months. Once they've got the idea of being on different receiving lines, you then talk about how players stand on those receiving lines, because how they stand, where they're facing, can then help them play football quicker. I put Gabriel here to help you understand where players stand. So Gabriel's the example. So say for example, Gabriel is the centre back or playmaker, as I sometimes call them. If he's standing facing his own goal, he does not know where the opposition are, or does not know as well as he could do where the opposition are. So if he's standing facing the goal, he then receives a pass. He's not fully aware of this player coming in here. On those first couple of receiving lines, especially if it's a goal kick, I would want them almost not even looking at our own goal. I want them looking at the opposition goal, okay, looking towards it, because the likelihood of there being a player here or here is very low. So there's no need for them to be facing that way. So you want them facing the opposition goal, because then when they receive it, they're already looking the right way. It'll help them make the decision quicker. If, say, for example, Gabriel's out wide, potentially with their bottom to the sideline so they can see both. Okay, again, absolutely no danger behind them. Okay, so therefore you might as well have your bottom to the sideline so therefore you can see both. If Gabriel's up front, now this is where it changes a little bit, okay, because now the danger is behind. So the idea changes since they want to protect the ball. They may be pinned. When we say pinned, it means there's a defender right up behind them, okay? Because if they're side on like this, their body shape is narrower, and therefore it might be easier then for the opposition player to get in front and steal it. If they're like this, they're wider. They can put their arms out wide and then protect the ball, protect themselves, protect the ball coming in, and then go from there. Again, Gordy will be a good person to talk about how to stand in this situation here. If you can get to the side of the player and then get a bit side on, and then you can see the opposition player, that's great. But don't be afraid to be standing like this. In the middle, it can be a bit of both. It can be side on, okay? It can be like a striker. It can be like that. Again, that depends on the situation around them. If there's players around them, if there's danger or the teammates or whatever, okay? So, again, once they've learned about being on different receiving lines, then you talk about how you stand on those lines. It might be an idea to ask the players the best. Say, look, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to play football. Which direction are we going? What do you have to consider when you're playing football? The opposition. So therefore, they can say, what's the best way to stand to know what's going on? To know what's going on, and also go forwards and protect yourself and protect the ball if it comes in. Okay, and you never know. Certain players may have certain different ways, and then it might be better for them. Good players to talk to about how to stand, how to look. Ryan Sipple and Nico are brilliant at scanning and checking their shoulders and getting in a good position to then to see where the opposition is. So if it might be nice to plug at those two to see what they think, because they may have better ideas than any of us. So again, receiving lines, that will take time. Then you talk about how you stand on those receiving lines to make it easier for you to play forwards. Okay, this will take months, I guarantee. It can even take years to learn all this properly, okay? Once they've got the idea of receiving lines, once they've got the idea of how to stand, then you can add in passing lanes, okay? Now, passing lanes, so receiving lines go across, passing lanes go up and down. The simplest way to break a pitch up is to, I have to apologise to a magnet, is to you go edge of the box, right down the middle, edge of the box, and that creates 4 passing lanes. Once they've got the idea of spreading up and down the pitch, now you want them to be spreading wide across, because again, players will instinctively come into the middle of the pitch, and that can be okay, but it makes it really crowded and if you come into the middle, it's the same as going together that way, and it will just make it easier for the opposition to either stand there and block you or go in there and steal it. If they're spread out across the pitch, the same principle. It's making the pitch organically bigger. In possession, when you have the ball, spread out across 3. I would say spread out across 3. The reason why I don't say 4 is because if we have the ball and we're playing forwards, it's all nice, and we spread across 4 and we lose the ball, wider players especially have got further to run back and track back, okay? This is not in proportion, so don't take this as gospel. It's not in proportion. if you're spread across 3, so say for example we're working our way down the left-hand side and we're going forward, if this player is here, he is still, that pitch is still going to be very wide. Okay, and then if we switch, and want to go this way, that's absolutely go, plays the ball forward, he runs forward, Zeb's running forward, then this player comes in there. Okay, spread across 3. If you again, you can do 4 if you want, but I guarantee it's more running for them, and some of the pitches are going to play on are huge. So if you spread across 3, it'll make it easier then when inevitably you lose the ball, because that happens in football. Not every time, but it happens a lot. It'll make it easier for players to recover when you then don't have the ball. The good thing with passing lanes then is then when you talk about being out of possession without the ball, then you can say, right, let's get within 2 lanes. Okay, if the ball goes out wide, fair enough. Ball's out wide, fair enough, a player can go out wide and try and steal it. But if you then say play within 2 lanes, it then makes it a lot narrower, a lot harder. You can see it there, you're already protecting your own goal because you're putting bodies in the way. But again, obviously, if the ball's playing out, say for example, ball's out wide, we can then almost come across to these 2 here, and it narrows it off and makes it harder for them to then switch the play. If they do switch, say for example, he's got a ping and he can switch it to the other side, we then switch across to these 2. Okay, make the pitch narrow, and again, it goes out wide, it can tuck in, and then protect the ball and protect everything else. But again, if it goes out wide, fair enough, but ideally, you want the central player to be within those 2 middle passing lanes when we don't have the ball, and then it'll just make it easy to defend. Okay, again, this will all, like I said before, it will take months and years to learn. Okay, but by doing this, it makes it easier. Focusing on receiving lines and passing lanes, it doesn't matter the formation, because to be fair, the formation could be let's go through at the back, shall we? Let's just say 3 at the back, 3 in midfield, and then 2 up front. Okay, again, when you have the ball, there we are, spread across 3. You go a bit further forward, spread across 3. Spread across 3. There we are. But again, because you're saying different receiving lines, it spreads it out. Passing lanes, it's balanced. Okay. The reason why I chose 1, 2, 2, 2, 2 is because if a player runs forward with the ball, which we still want to encourage, because if he runs forward into this space, okay, it creates an overload. An overload is where you have more attackers than defenders. Okay, potentially creates an overload. And then if he carries on running forwards, this player can switch. And because it is lines, lots of lines, it's easy then for players to switch. But you can still switch anyway regarding the formation. That's me digressing, okay? So the way you're going to coach this, the way you're going to talk to the players about this. This is the setup I had at training, okay? Cone, you can see that. Cones and up and down across. Okay, so the way I always go is going so I always do 8 steps and put a cone down. 8 steps, put a cone, 8 steps. I go 8, 16, 24, 32. 8, 16, 24. And then that's the space I'll use in training. You may have to make it a bit smaller when you go on the Astro, but on the grass you've got plenty of room. If you're able to, get spot markers and then connect the cones going across, because then that way you're literally giving players lines to stand on. In the games at training, start, and then all you do is have 2 teams, so 1, 2, and 3 versus 1, 2, and 3. It can be 4, it doesn't matter. And then you just play line ball. The reason why I said at training 2 weeks ago, 4 opportunities at one end, and then once you've used those 4 opportunities, you switch over, because then it's starting afresh. They're having to then reset and then learn the principles of, right, if I have the ball here, one player's got to be here, one player's got to be here, and then if you've got an extra player, one there, it then helps them learn the principles of being on different receiving lines, okay? Excuse me. And then once they get the idea of being on different receiving lines, you can then add in passing lanes, okay? Because you can then connect these, because will, yeah, because if depending how you put your spot markers down, you could make these mini boxes already. So it then helps you then with training. And then with this as well, if you can then talk about rotation. So say you've got, let's say it's 4, okay? So he passes the ball in. Or you could then say, well, before he passes the ball, if he moves away, opposition player's probably going to follow me. The game makes room for him to come in to receive, or them to come in to receive. So all this is just a smaller scale of a game. It'll make it it'll be chaos and they won't get success, but it'll be easier for them to transfer that knowledge they learn into the game because it is a smaller game. There's a lot of research saying smaller games are really good. In training, you could do this every week, literally every week. Set it up. I'd say start with the idea of you've got to have four chances to get from one end to the other. Line ball. The idea of line ball is you've got to dribble the ball and stop it on the opposition line, either by receiving a pass on it or dribbling a ball onto the opposition line. Okay. If the ball goes out of play, you reset and go again. You progress it by then saying it's not 4 chances, it's just a normal game of line ball. If the ball goes out of play, you take a throw in or whatever. A good thing to practice too, instead of starting at one end, start in the middle. And then they have to practice doing setting up on different receiving lines behind the ball and in front of the ball. Because then that way, it's not just always from the same position. You can even have them start in the middle if you want. Have them start in the middle. And so as soon as you kick the ball, you're active and you can be tackled. Because then if you start from different positions, they're learning like they would in a game. Because a game's not always going to start from a goal kick. It'll start from the side, it'll start from the middle, whatever you like. Progress it further, add some mini goals. And then you've got literally a small-sided game. With this, it can then be easier to teach them about how to stand in relation to the ball, wherever the ball is, and where opposition players are. Again, it's a mini match. It'll be easier if you've got 3 of these areas set up across your field or on the Astro. It'll be easier doing it in smaller groups, because if you try to do it to a group of 18, a group of 20, it's very hard and they'll get bored because you're only talking, if you stop the game to talk about it, you're only talking to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. But if you've got a big game of 18, the rest are not listening, they'll lose concentration. If it's smaller, it'll apply to everybody because it's a smaller scale. And then that's it, that's for training. Then, like I said, you start from one end, and then line ball game, and then add goals, and then that's it. That can be training. Arrival activity, just do 2v1s, 2v2s, absolutely fine. Just as players arrive in, make sure they're in a small space. Otherwise, there's low intensity because they just spread out and they're miles apart from each other. And then all the arrival activity, it could be Panna, so that nutmeg game, or it could even be, remember that first game I did where I had like a square area and I just had 4 goals and then 2 teams were shooting that way, playing a game, and the other 2 teams are going that way. You could have, in that area, 16 players at least. You have 20 if you make it a bit bigger. And then it's just one game going that way, one game going that way. It applies the principles of being high and low, but it also it applies the idea of tight spaces. You've got to look after the ball and protect the ball and so forth. That can be your arrival activity. That could even go on for half an hour. If they're on task and they're engaged, that can go on for half an hour. Then add this, do the line ball, then make it a small-sided game, and then take everything away and play a big game, and then that's training. You could do that, and that's probably what I would end up doing for this season, at least this season. Okay, smaller sided stuff. It'll be a lot more intense. Then therefore they'll be developing their football fitness, and it'll be more appropriate as well, physically more appropriate development for training in preparation for the bigger sided games. And then you could make this slightly bigger depending on numbers. It could go an extra 8. It can go an extra 8 wide, extra 8 long, depending on numbers and so forth. And then therefore that's it. And that's that. Like I said, that'll be the setup I'd have done for like I said, for the rest of their youth development phase, which is up until they're under 16s. Like I said, I hope you do not have to do this. You don't. You can literally do what you want, but if you liked what I've done so far, if you like the coaching and development, the philosophy and the ideas so far, this is the next step of it. So please, like I said, take it on board as much as you can on board. Again, do not think you have to do all of this in one session. Just focus on, like I said, the first until Christmas minimum. Just on the focus on being on different receiving lines, small sided stuff at training. Build it up to a bigger game at the end of training. The transfer, it will take time because you've got opposition players trying to steal the ball. If you've played football before, and you've had old school style of training and stuff where you do like unopposed stuff first, it's okay. It's okay. But if you imagine like a game of football will feel, to a player a lot of high emotion, low emotion, high emotion, low emotion. It's people trying to steal it, people trying to tackle you, yada yada yada. That's how a game will feel to a player. Being tackled, scoring, conceding, tackle, whatever, high, low, no. If you do unopposed stuff, so there's no defenders and stuff, and it's slow and it's not very intense, it will feel like this. It won't. And therefore, bits will transfer a little bit in learning. But if you make training feel like a game, but then make sure that everyone's engaged and active, it'll be a bit more like that, okay? So it'll be similar, not exactly the same, but it'll be similar, and therefore the more learning will happen. But if you stretch these lines out like a piece of string, it'll take longer. That's a bit of academic approach to skill acquisition and skill adaptation, but make sure that this feels like a game, makes it small-sided, one ball between 8, one ball between 6. Yes, I know it's not like a 9v9 game, but it'll allow the more to learn because there's more opportunities to play. Sorry for the waffle. I really hope that helped.